that North Carolina is also a battleground state in the fight for women's reproductive freedom. 51 years ago today, the Supreme Court issued a landmark decision in Roe v. Wade that protected a woman's constitutional right to make decisions about her own body and her own health care. For 5 decades, women relied on those protections to stay healthy, to stay safe, to stay alive. For 5 decades, this bedrock constitutional decision kept right-wing lawmakers at bay and ensured what a majority of the people wanted and still want: reproductive freedom for women. But in 2022, a Supreme Court stacked with Donald Trump appointees stripped those protections away, unleashing these same right-wing lawmakers in states across the country to severely ban abortion or outlaw it entirely. Your zip code should not determine your constitutional rights, but because of Donald Trump, it does. In fact, he proudly brags about that he himself got rid of Roe v. Wade. And if Republicans take over the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives and send a President Trump a national abortion ban, he would sign it in a New York minute. We cannot let him have the chance to do that. In North Carolina last year, a one-vote Republican supermajority in the Senate and House passed a 12-week abortion ban over my veto. Every single Republican voted for it, even some who had promised not to, and every single Democrat voted against it. And Republicans have pledged to go even further next year, making our laws more restrictive and more dangerous for women. That's why breaking the Republican supermajority in our state legislature and electing a Democratic governor this year is so important. Look, I'm term limited, and I can't run again this year. So our governor's race in North Carolina is most likely going to be a contest between Attorney General Josh Stein, a strong protector of women's health freedom, and Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who has promised to outlaw abortion entirely. Let me say that again. The leading Republican candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, has promised to outlaw abortion in North Carolina entirely. Politicians have no place in the exam room with a woman and her doctor. And since the fall of Roe v. Wade, we've heard countless horrifying stories from women across the country being denied life-saving care, losing their ability to have more children in the future, and begging the courts to help them, often to no avail. And we've heard from doctors who've had to make impossible choices between what they know is the best medical care and draconian laws that threaten to punish them for doing it. We cannot let Donald Trump back into the White House where he and other right-wing Republicans could ban abortion nationwide. President Biden and Vice President Harris are the candidates in this race who will defend a woman's right to choose. The candidates who have called on Congress to pass a law to codify in federal law the protections of Roe v. Wade, those same protections that protected women for 5 decades. They are the candidates who will fight to restore health care freedom for women in North Carolina and across America. Now, while Republicans like Donald Trump and Mark Robinson want to use the long arm of government to dictate to women what their private health care decisions should be, Democrats up and down the ballot are committed to their reproductive freedom. Women's reproductive freedom will be on the ballot this November. And we're going to continue to make sure that every single voter knows the stakes. I'm proud to be here with the Democratic leader in the North Carolina State House, Robert Reeves, and another leader in the North Carolina House, Ashton Clemens, along with Dr. Catherine Ferris. And so I'm now going to turn the podium over at this point to Leader Reeves.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you all for being here. And as is stated, today marks 51 years since the Roe v. Wade decision was handed down. A triumph for women and a triumph for the freedom of every American. And for 5 decades, Roe v. Wade stood as an indispensable pillar of liberty in our country. But Republicans had one overarching goal in 2016, and that was to build a Supreme Court majority that would tear down that pillar and eliminate this constitutionally protected right to choose. And we've seen how quickly that right was attacked here in North Carolina by Republicans passing an abortion ban. Thanks to the former administration and the former cohorts in leadership, those Republicans made sure that 1 in 3 women of reproductive age are living in what is in effect an abortion ban. And thanks to them, doctors are being threatened with felonies and jail time for providing life-saving care to women. And women are being forced to carry pregnancies at the risk to their very health and lives. But don't just take it from me. Take it from the former defeated president who said on national television just 2 weeks ago how proud he was to be the one to terminate Roe. Make no mistake, if Republicans return to the White House in 2024, and if the right-wing extremists that have taken over that party gain more seats, they will and have promised a national ban on abortions. And it's not just the front runner who's making these promises, but every person running in the Republican primary has embraced the same anti-woman and anti-freedom agenda. But here's the good news. With President Biden and Vice President Harris, a national abortion ban will have no chance of becoming law. So now I would ask you to recognize my deputy leader, Ashton Clemens, who has been an amazing advocate for women's rights in this area.
Good afternoon. I'm thankful to join strong leaders today who believe that women should make their own health care decisions and have sacrificed to make that true, including Governor Cooper and Representative Reeves, and especially Dr. Ferris on the front lines, to sound the alarm for how important the 2024 election is for the women of North Carolina. May 16th, 2023 was the lowest point in my time as a legislator. As I do many days before heading to Raleigh, I drove my twin boys to school and then dropped my 12-year-old daughter off at her middle school. I watched her walk in with her braid bouncing and carrying her lunchbox, and tears filled my eyes because I knew I was going to Raleigh for a vote that literally made her less safe, less able to make her own decisions, and more likely to experience trauma and death in pregnancy and childbirth. When Donald Trump was first elected, there were many reasons I was scared about the future, but the most poignant reason for me was as a mother to a daughter. As a woman who has watched countless indescribably difficult situations with female family members and friends over their own journeys to become mothers, I feared for every single one of their futures. And the reality is even worse than I feared. Women all over the United States are unable to keep themselves safe because of extreme legislation pushed by politicians more interested in controlling women than keeping them alive. Every story of a woman being turned away for care, having to flee their homes to save their lives, breaks my heart and angers my soul. What is even worse are the thousands of women whose stories do not get told, who do not have the resources to cross state lines to save themselves or their ability to have children in the future. The heartbreak and anger are even more personal with the decision by North Carolina's Republican leadership to take the right away of me, my daughter, her friends, to access care. And even in the small time that they were able to, they passed legislation that causes her unnecessary trauma. North Carolinians have a critical choice in 2024. The Republican supermajority has made it clear that if they can stay in power, they plan to take away even more of my daughter's rights. The leading Republican candidate for governor has regularly and consistently advocated for a total abortion ban, even going so far to say it is Darwinism if a woman is raped and become pregnant. Donald Trump is openly bragging about ending Roe and wanting to go further. This is the choice in front of us. Leaders for our state and country who trust women and want to keep them safe, or those that simply do not trust women and are causing them harm. The night of the vote to strip away my daughter's rights and safety, she had a dance performance. I sat in the audience incredibly distraught, watching beautiful, confident young girls dancing and knowing that on this exact day, their lives had been made less safe. But with this despair also came my deep commitment to continue our work. Very clearly, without stopping the extremism of Donald Trump, Mark Robinson, and the Republican supermajority, her life and the lives of other girls on that stage get worse. Onward we will fight for my daughter and for yours. And I am so incredibly grateful for the healthcare providers who are leading us on the way, like Dr. Ferris, and I turn it over to her now.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Catherine Ferris, and I am a proud provider of abortion care. And let me make one thing extremely clear. Abortion is health care. As any healthcare provider will tell you, every pregnancy is different. Each patient has different needs, and circumstances can change quickly throughout a pregnancy. A woman's health and well-being should be the only guide for medical decision-making, not the agenda of extremist politicians. That's why protecting reproductive rights is so important. Abortion bans and restrictions make providing health care so much more challenging, and they put people's lives at risk. We've seen countless horrifying stories of women across the country denied vital, time-sensitive health care. We've seen doctors threatened with jail time simply for doing their jobs. We've seen what happens when you deny people the freedom to make their own healthcare decisions. And I see it every day with my patients. Every person should be able to get the healthcare they need from a provider they trust within their own community, with dignity and respect. We do not need to speculate about what could happen if we don't re-elect President Biden and Vice President Harris. We are living in a world that is a direct consequence of Donald Trump's dangerous legacy of stacking our courts with judges intent on denying people's rights rather than protecting them. If Trump returns to the White House, it will only get worse. As a doctor, I am fully behind President Biden and Vice President Harris because I know that they care about the health and freedom of my patients as much as I do. Reproductive freedom is on the ballot this November nationally and in North Carolina, and we're going to continue to make sure everybody knows that. Thank you.
Dr. Ferris, thank you for the work you do every day and leadership of Representative Clemens and Leader Reeves, and thank these young people, committed young people, for joining us today, and we'll be glad to take your questions.
Folks, I think we could just go down the line from left to right if folks have any questions.
When it comes to abortion, what's at stake for the election of 2024?
Women's reproductive freedom is on the ballot in 2024, and particularly in the battleground state of North Carolina. You've got Donald Trump running for president, who single-handedly brought down Roe v. Wade and brags about it, and would sign a nationwide abortion ban in a New York minute. On the other side, you have President Biden and Vice President Harris, who want to put in place protections across the board. And here in North Carolina, you have a governor's race and legislative races that are going to determine whether Republicans are going to get to do more damage to women in North Carolina. So this issue is going to mean a great deal in the next election.
Okay, what is your response to the injunction that came down around same-day registrants, and how do you think it would help North Carolina voters?
Well, it's clear that this Republican legislature has put restrictions on voting, and I'm glad to see the courts step back and stop that for the time being. I mean, somebody should get notice if they're going to be able to take away their vote, and the courts recognize that, and I think that's positive.
Dr. Ferris, you mentioned that you're already seeing impacts of Roe being overturned in your practice. I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on how your practice is faring, what you're hearing from patients since that decision came down.
It's been devastating. The goal of these bans is to cause harm and confusion, and they are 100% working. We have patients who come to North Carolina into our clinic for their mandated in-person 72-hour consent visit, and despite all of our efforts during scheduling, they don't understand they're not getting an abortion today. And then they're trying to figure out how they're going to get another car to borrow at least 72 hours later, driving 10 hours round trip, find someone to watch their kids, get time off of work without losing their job. It is devastating. It is traumatizing. And no other part of healthcare is treated like this. Abortion shouldn't be either.
If I could add one thing to the earlier question. Thank you. And when you were asking what it is that's on the ballot in 2024, I think one of the things you also don't hear talked about a lot is the fact that it's not just abortion that's on there, but it's also the issue of what type of health care women are going to be able to get, because you're talking about medical procedures and medications that now are available to women that will not be available to women when it comes down to trying to make choices that are going to protect their health and safety. Contraception is on the ballot. All of these things are actually things that are on the ballot along with what you traditionally think of as abortion, and it really comes down to, as you heard everybody up here say, but especially when Leader Clemens was talking about women's safety, about young women's safety, about older women's safety, and the procedures and options that they have available to them that doctors like Dr. Ferris won't even be able to present as options because of legislation that has already been promised. This isn't something that we think will happen. This is something that has been promised as this is what we will do after the elections of 2024.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.